Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you are watching fifth and final part of What If Naruto Has a Counter Personality. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Naruto looked at himself after his chakra was full again. With this body, he could make 1,000,000 clones, and each one would be able to fight for at least a day. But he didn't make any more clones. Instead, he had one of the clones he had already made take his place in the chakra recharging seat. That clone would be in charge of making 1,000,000 clones. With the Rinnegan, Naruto could send information directly into the minds of the clones whenever he wanted or whenever the clones thought it was important. So, the clones no longer had to change themselves to be like him in order to learn from him. Now that he could make 1,000,000 copies of himself every day, there was no way to beat him. He didn't have to pay attention to anything anymore, and he didn't have to hide or train. Physical training would make his new body stronger, but if he tried to train here, one punch would destroy the whole village. So, for Naruto to train his body, he would have to find a place far away from any people. For now, the training was over, and it was time to start putting the world back together again before everything fell apart. Naruto walked up to the Hyuga clan's gates and grabbed the guard's head. When the guard tried to act like he didn't see Naruto, he had to duck. "I'll break your legs if you disrespect my fiancé in front of me again," Naruto said in a neutral tone. It seemed like Hinata was too nice to people like that. He was the clan leader's fiancé, so when the guards saw him coming, they were supposed to bow to him and, if they could, tell him where Hinata was. They were being rude to him by acting like they didn't know him, but Naruto didn't care because he had been like that from the start. But by being rude to him, they were also being rude to Hinata, which was 1,000 times worse than the little things they did to him. The guard begged Naruto to forgive him while Naruto used his evolved chakra to put pressure on him. This made the guard sweat a lot and make his legs shake. Naruto took his hand off the guard's head and said, "You're forgiven, but don't forget what I told you." He then went into the courtyard, where more guards had seen what happened and rushed to bow to him. As Naruto walked into the main house, the guard at the gate fell to the ground because his legs were shaking. The other guards helped him right away. Naruto shut the door behind him and was talking to a servant girl about how to get to Hinata at the time. But he always kept his eyes open, since they only used a small amount of his vast chakra and he could quickly get it back. With his eyes open, he could see the whole village if he wanted to. However, he only looked around him because he didn't want to be thought of as a spy. He only had to watch where the chakra flows went to keep an eye on the village. "Young master, the new clan leader, and the elders are in a meeting," the maid said with respect. "I'll apologize to my fiancé for interrupting," Naruto said, taking responsibility, and the maid led him to where the meeting was happening. Naruto didn't understand why Hinata was still meeting with the elders. It had been 3 weeks since she became head of the clan, and these meetings shouldn't last more than 3 days. At these meetings, Hinata would explain her plan for running the clan, and the elders would give their advice. Naruto grimaced and looked for the meeting because he didn't know what was going on. He seemed to have more important things to do than bother poor Hinata at night. Now he felt a little bad that he hadn't asked her how she was doing in her clan. It seemed like he had just pushed her to the front and gone to sleep. Naruto stopped for a moment before continuing to walk. The maid looked at him out of the corner of her eye, but she didn't know what was wrong with him. Naruto, on the other hand, kept his face calm because she had nothing to do with this. "Old men, I spare their lives, but they dare to bully my wife, so you can see they don't fear death," Naruto thought as he walked behind the maid and watched Hinata meet with the elders in a large room. There were more than 30 people sitting around a rectangle of small tables. Hinata and her father sat at the head of the table, while the other older people sat on the sides. The elders were in their 30s or older or were in their 60s or older. Many of them had gray hair and problems with their backs. There were mostly men, but there were also a few young women. Because they all married within the clan, their eyes and hair were all the same color. It took Naruto 2 minutes to get to the meeting. When he did that and the maid went first to introduce him, the clan elders glared at him and didn't try to hide their feelings from Hinata. Naruto thought, Poor Hinata, as he used genjutsu on everyone but Hinata's father and Hinata herself. This genjutsu made them feel like they were being crushed by a huge weight. As expected, the elders flinched, and some of them had to work hard to keep their pride and keep from falling over the table and drooling like they were drunk. Hiyashi and Hinata saw Naruto attack the elders, but they didn't say anything because they knew why he was doing it and Hiyashi didn't think it was a bad thing. Naruto took his time getting to the head of the table, while the maid, seeing that things were getting complicated, hurried to bow goodbye and run away. She didn't want to get in the middle of the leaders' fight. Naruto got to Hinata and stood on the left side of her. First, he got down on his knees in front of her and turned his back to the elders. Then, to Hinata's surprise, he got down on his knees. "Dear fiancé, your fiancé apologizes for interrupting in this way, but I wanted to be a part of your daily life," Naruto said with respect. "Would you let me stay, my young fiancé and head of the clan?" Naruto asked in a humble way as he put more pressure on the elders, who couldn't keep a calm face any longer and clenched their teeth and fists to fight back. "Naruto. You can stay," Hinata stutteringly said, a little red in the face. Hayashi stopped her from picking him up, though, with a subtle move. Naruto was just following the rules, after all. Since he had walked in on the clan heads meeting, the least he could do was get down on his knees and say sorry. He would be rude if he didn't do at least that. Naruto raised his head and nodded in thanks. He then looked at the clan elders. "You don't have to pay attention to me, clan chief and elders. I've only heard from the maid that the elders don't like how the new clan chief is running things. Since this chief is my fiancé and future wife, I'd like to see how these problems are solved." Naruto smiled as he finished, then let the genjutsu go on the elders. They moved in their seats as if they were being held down by a heavy load and then suddenly let go, which made them lose their balance for a few seconds. Hinata and Hiyashi both noticed this, but Hiyashi didn't say anything, and Hinata just bit her lip and turned her head to look at her father, whose opinion she valued the most. The elders were shocked when they saw Naruto, but when he smiled at them, no one said anything. In fact, no one looked at him at all. "Clan leader, we should keep going," Hiyashi said, and Hinata quickly nodded. "Elders, since our guest wants to see how we solve our problems and we haven't made any progress, I'll start from the beginning so you can show me your problems with the new rules and satisfy Naruto's curiosity," said Hiyashi in a neutral tone as he opened the rulebook back to the beginning. "Elder Counselor Hiyashi, we had already made some agreements before," said a middle-aged man. "You're right," an old woman said. Hiyashi gave a calm nod. "I know that, but the clan leader's fiancé has been clear about it. He wants to see how we deal with all of our problems, and it seems like some of you aren't happy with the choices we've already made. I will give you another chance to tell me what's wrong, so let's not waste time. Take this as a sign of respect for our guest, who politely asked to join this meeting and has earned the trust of our new clan chief, who calls him by name, something no one else in this clan has been able to do until now," Hiyashi said. Some of the elders' eyes twitched at Hiyashi Hyuga's clear threats and mafia-like behavior. He had shown them his power several times to keep them from questioning what he said. Naruto stood up straight and smiled at anyone who looked at him, making it clear that if they broke his fiancé's rules in front of him, they would not be alive the next day. "Okay, if no one has anything against it, let's start by breaking the cursed seal on the children of the secondary branch, which has already been done. It's clear that no one should try to put the seal back on again, neither kids nor adults. I want to remind you that this is the first point, because all of the new rules of our clan, which are based on the joining of the two branches, come from this," Hiyashi said. Hiyashi asked, "Does anyone disagree with this law our clan chief made or want to put any conditions on it being passed?" Even though more than half of the elders were quick to deny it, Naruto could still feel the cursed seal's aura on them. The rest of the elders gave him sidelong looks and clenched their teeth, but no one spoke up. "Then we won't make any changes or questions about this first point. The next step is to use a merit system to decide who gets the new jobs." Even though no one argued or complained about the rules, the meeting went on for 5 hours. Naruto didn't have an opinion on any law. He just watched. What really surprised him was that this clan, which had so few members, had a set of rules for the whole continent. They even had a dress code, and none of these things had been changed by Hinata. She focused on making big changes, like getting rid of clan branches and making a merit system. She also let members marry outside the clan as long as they brought their spouses into the clan, just like the Uchiha did. She also banned the use of the Cursed Seal and gave their lineage a new specialization for ranged combat. As far as Naruto could tell, the bureaucratic and administrative system would stay the same, with the elders in charge. However, there were now a lot more elders because the elders of the secondary branch, which no longer existed, had been added to the group. The servants brought food and sweets during the break. Then, at Hiyoshi's suggestion, who was smiling like it was his wedding day, they kept making new laws or making sure that the ones they already had were still right, until they got to a really complicated point. When the clan branches were wiped out, many servants asked the main branch members for their property and possessions, which they already had and were not willing to give up. Even though they agreed that their families could live together, their homes were too small. Everyone was surprised and scared when Naruto suddenly cleared his throat. Naruto apologized to Hinata for not following the rules and asked for permission to speak. Hinata said yes. Clan chief, elders, I think it's clear what's wrong at this point. They need homes that are bigger. I don't mean to be mean, but their buildings are too simple. This would be a good place for my wife to live if they built a couple more stories and used some of the training grounds to build more buildings and gardens, Naruto said. When the elders opened their eyes again, they saw that they were now talking about how good his wife's home was. Hinata blushed slightly as she told Naruto, "We don't have enough money to build more houses. Don't worry, I'll build everything myself. I will start here, and I will do it right now. Father-in-law, take everything you think is valuable out of this house. I'll level the land and build a proper mansion," Naruto said. Ahira had the power to make anything, and it would be a waste if he didn't even use it to build himself a mansion. Hiyashi and the other elders looked at him to see if he was joking, but Hinata just nodded. "Thanks, Naruto, but you don't have to move so fast. It might take a while to get things out of this mansion," Hinata said. "Don't worry, I've already looked over everything. Only take out things that are worth money or important to you. I'll take care of the rest. Take everything, even the sheets and clothes, but you don't have to save the appliances, lamps, and other things," Naruto said. Hinata said, "Father, let's try," which, since she was the clan leader and he was there, was in order. "Clan leader, our home is a very important part of the clan. If something went wrong, it would also hurt the clan's reputation," Hiyashi said. Hinata looked at Naruto, who nodded and turned on the 6 ways sage mode. He then raised his hand to control his chakra and use his power to make all things. In the space between the small tables, an oriental-styled wooden trunk with reliefs covered in jewels appeared. It was perfectly finished, varnished, and polished. Naruto gave a nod so that the elders and Hiyashi could look at what he had made. They moved the tables out of the way and carefully looked inside the trunk to see if it was a chakra copy, like a shadow clone. Naruto smiled and pointed at the trunk with his finger. It broke into pieces and was crushed, but it never went away. One of the older elders asked, "Are your eyes really the Rinnegan?" This made 2 other elders and Hiyashi freeze for a second. Then, in shock, they looked at him and then at the other clan elders, as if they didn't know what to do. Just talking about the Rinnegan could cause a ruckus among the village elders and in the ninja world as a whole. Hinata asked, "What is the Rinnegan?" Because she could tell that her father and the 3 elders were not happy. Legend says that the Rinnegan is the most powerful dojutsu in the world. It is said that the sage of the 6 paths, Hagoromo, the god who made the world, owned it. Hagoromo is a mythical god to some ninja. People say that the Rinnegan can even make new worlds and bring the dead back to life. That's true, but bringing the dead back to life costs life itself, so forget about that. As for making worlds, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but I could build some mansions, Naruto said, using the chance to explain what his eyes couldn't do. Elders who didn't know why Hiyashi was looking at them as if he was deciding if it would be better to kill them all turned pale and rushed to get on their knees so they wouldn't say anything. All Naruto did was smile. Calm down. Once I build this mansion and the other village elders see my eyes, they will all come to the same conclusion as the clan chief and the elders, Naruto said. Hiyashi said in alarm, you can't do that. What good is this power if I can't show off a little and build a nice home for my future wife? Naruto asked. Does Tsunade-sama know about this, Naruto? Hinata said this. Naruto nodded as one of his clones went to tell her about his latest discoveries and explain the reincarnation jutsu he had made from the Otsutsuki karma seal. Then we don't get to decide, Naruto. Hinata said with a smile and a small bow, we will be grateful for your help. She was the only one still sitting down and following the rules. We have the Rinnegan, said the first old man, still in shock. Naruto blinked, and it looked like this old man had already claimed Rinnegan mastery for the Hyuga clan. Naruto was called to an emergency meeting with the clan leaders and JNIN of the village. He had just finished building the Hyuga a lot of mansions in an oriental style with all the modern amenities like air conditioners and designer kitchens. In each mansion, he gave them an entire floor for training and filled the empty spaces with beautiful gardens and ponds with goldfish. They didn't miss the sudden appearance of the mansions or the fact that he wasn't hiding his eyes because his clones were walking around the city showing off their new eyes. When Tsunade saw Naruto, she sighed and said, Naruto. This showed all the clan leaders that he had the Rinnegan. Calm down, the villages will soon forget about us, Naruto told them. Why, what could be more scandalous than the Rinnegan's appearance? Shikaku Nara asked, realizing what he meant and looking even more worried. Naruto gave them a shrug to show that it had nothing to do with them. Of course, it's another Rinnegan user who wants to take over the world. But I've already talked to him, and he's promised me that he won't mess with the ninja villages as long as they don't attack his army. Even if they attack him, he won't go into any ninja village because of it, but the lives of the ninja who attack him will depend on him, Naruto said. Is that another Rinnegan? How is that possible? Asked Kaharu Udatane, the old advisor. Naruto looked at Tsunade. Since she was in charge of the route, he couldn't tell anyone without her permission. As everyone looked at her, Tsunade made a face. Speak, but if you say a word twice, I'll cut out your tongue, Tsunade said. Naruto nodded and looked at the clan leaders and JNIN, who also nodded seriously. Madara Uchiha was still alive, and she had been tinkering with some legacies. He was able to get the Rinnegan, but before he could get to it, he put it in a young man so he could use it in his plans. I beat him before he could do anything, though. Unfortunately, the other Rinnegan user is very strong, and if we fought it would destroy this village and maybe even the whole world. That's why I've decided to talk, and now I'll take over the world. But don't worry. The Rinnegan is so powerful that the war won't even last a year, maybe not even a month, once it starts. Then you can decide for yourselves, Naruto said. Everyone had doubts about him. The leader of the Aburame clan asked Tsunade, how did you get the Rinnegan? Tsunade hit the table. Don't ask me any more about the Rinnegan. Madara Uchiha has been dead for a long time, and we don't know anything about the Rinnegan, Tsunade said, making it clear that this would be the village's official answer. Homura Mitokado, the other elder advisor, looked into Naruto's eyes and said, when the other Rinnegan user shows up, everyone will look to us. The clan leaders were worried as they looked at him and then at the Hokage. Tsunade looked at him with a raised eyebrow. I'm a genius, but the other Rinnegan user is just a cheap copy. If they can't beat him, they shouldn't bother us with questions, Naruto said. Tsunade gave a satisfied nod. The leader of the Inuzuka clan asked, didn't you say before that you couldn't face the other Rinnegan user? Naruto gave a head shake. I told them that if we face each other, the world will burn and the village will be destroyed. You're all going to die, but I'll win and live. I haven't fought because I'm afraid of dying. I've made peace because I care about the lives of my friends and family. Also, I've talked about this conquest before, and I don't think it's against our best interests. Naruto said, it would be better to wait and see. The Lord of the Fire Country has a deal with our village, Shikaku said. If they call and we don't show up, that would be breaking our promise, he said. I never said we should do that, Naruto said. Shikaku came to more conclusions, but he kept quiet for the sake of the village. The other clan leaders knew he didn't think anyone from the Fire Country would come to ask for help. Inoichi Yamanaka asked, "What does this person want to do, and where did he come from?" "He is from the Rain Country, and his plan is to bring peace by getting rid of the feudal lords." Naruto talked about his plan to bring peace in a general way. Shikaku asked when he was done explaining everything, "If this system of government works, how will the ninja villages stay alive? The new emperor won't make an army, so the ninja villages that sign up with him can make a deal." "Of course, as the root chief, I've already taken some steps in this direction," Naruto said, gesturing and showing a few reports and a treaty he supposedly made with Pain. In general, it was the same deal that Konoha had with the Lord of the Fire Country. After the clan leaders and ninja agreed to the terms of the deal, Naruto and Hinata went back to the Hyuga clan, where the elders moved up the wedding date. They wanted to get married right away, but their clan leader passed out, so they had to do things in a more formal way. The clan elders got rid of Naruto, and they kept dividing up the palaces he had made. Naruto turned a corner on his way out and jumped on Hinata's bed as he went into her room. Hinata sighed and shyly snuggled up to him. Naruto said in a mean way, "Hinata, it's time to talk about our children." "What?" Hinata asked. "Babies," Naruto said in a clear voice. Hinata passed out 3 times before she was able to say anything. Naruto told her that there would only be girls because he didn't want to risk having a boy like Boruto. Second, these wouldn't have his bloodline or Hinata's improved bloodline. They would just have the best Hyuga bloodline, but it wouldn't be changed in any way. Nothing would be given to their children, and if they wanted their power or Hinata's, they would have to work for it. Also, no one would be able to make bad plans with their daughters. Naruto started making plans to take over the world the day after he and Hinata talked about his children and how they might be able to help him in some way. He sent clones all over the continent, but that was just the start of his plan. The conquest wouldn't start for another month, when his clones had learned everything they could about the current rulers and were ready to take them all at once. Naruto thought he was a god and didn't want to fight wars that didn't need to be fought. All of the lords and the people they sent to represent them would be caught. Concerning his main body, he had things to do. With Pain's help, he showed up in front of Kakuzu and Hidan, the immortal duo of Akatsuki, who were wearing black cloaks with red clouds. No one else was around as they walked along a dirt road in the middle of a forest. One of his clones had found them, and when Naruto got the coordinates, he used his space dojutsu to get there. Hidan and Kakuzu were surprised to see him come out using the same dojutsu as Tobi. Naruto didn't give them a chance to say anything, and he took their souls in an instant. Against this dojutsu, the body's ability to stay alive didn't matter, and both bodies without souls fell to the ground. Naruto put them in a box and sent them to his lab with a clone so he could study them. With the 8 gates always open in a body like a god, no ninja on this planet could even imagine being able to see them move. So, Naruto moved on to the next person he wanted to kill. Kisame and Itachi were looking at a peddler's stall where clay pots were being sold in a busy market. This town was in the Fire Country, and there were a lot of people in the area. When people saw the space change and Naruto appear, they moved to the sides and the smarter ones ran for their lives, knowing that a fight between ninjas could break out. "Thank you for waiting for me," Naruto said as the 2 ninjas turned around. Itachi's Mangekyo Sharingan was already turned on, and Kisame had his sword in his hands. "It looks like this will make our job easier," Kisame said with a smile. The smile went away when Naruto grabbed him by the neck without him being able to see it and used the soul-stealing dojutsu. "Calm down, Itachi," Naruto said. "Sasuke will be mad at me if I have to beat you up to get you back to the village, and Tsunade will break your neck if she has to explain more." He said this as he absorbed Kisami's soul and Itachi's genjutsu did nothing. Itachi said, "I won't have to keep an eye on Akatsuki any longer." Naruto made a clone of Kisami's body and said, "That's right." He then told Kisame, "Go with the clone. It will take you to my lab, where I can cure your eyes and your fatal illness." Itachi looked into his eyes and asked, "Have you been with Pain?" Pain and I talked, and after I told him some truths, he agreed to change his plan. As the root chief, I now tell you to go back to the village and tell Tsunade how you're doing when you're better. If you don't stop, I'll beat you up and drag you into her office in front of your younger brother, Naruto said as a final warning. I think I'd like to understand how powerful you are. Itachi got 20 soft kicks that broke all of his bones and sent him flying. His clone made another clone, which went up to Itachi after Naruto punched him to stop him, took him to his lab to heal him, and then dragged him to Tsunade's office. Even the Mangekyu couldn't see the speed of a god in the 8 open doors at the same time. Itachi was foolish to try to fight him. Naruto took a look around him. It was a mess on the market. Even though he punched Itachi in the head, the shockwaves from his kicks destroyed the stalls in the square and knocked down a lot of people who were screaming in pain because their bones were broken. Naruto made 50 clones that stayed in place and healed people and fixed the damage by making all things while he moved through space again to a place where people were waiting for him. Thanks for coming, Brother Panda, Naruto told Gaara, who was there and was one of the 3 people there on their own free will. The other people were taken away by force. Gaara scolded everyone, "Stop calling me Brother Panda," with an embarrassed look as they all looked in his eyes. Some even nodded to show that they knew what his nickname meant. Naruto didn't pay attention to him and instead looked at Kurama, who was still using his old Uzumaki body. Naruto gave him a friendly nod and put out his hand. Kurama gave it to him and smiled with his teeth. This time, I pulled them all away. Retrieving my sealed part has helped me a lot with this, Kurama said, pointing to his freed prisoners who were carrying weapons. But he would hurt anyone who tried to leave. Since Kurama was not kind and was not thought to be kind, his prisoners were very good at following orders. Yugito Ni was a blonde woman who was the Jinchuriki of Matabi, the 2 tails. She was one of Kurama's prisoners. He was followed by Roshi, who was the Jinchuriki of Son Goku, the 4 tails, and had red hair and a beard. Last but not least, there was Utakata. He was the Jinchuriki of Seiken, the 6 tails, and he looked elegant and calm. He wore a kimono. Kurama said, "In addition to these fools, Killer Bee and Gaiki have come of their own accord and are willing to work with us." Killer Bee, who was tall and strong, greeted him in a strange way. Gaiki, the 8 tails, made a tentacle appear and waved as well. They were the only ones who got along well with one another. "Hi, everybody. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. I used to be the Jinchuriki of Kurama, but we're no longer together." Naruto introduced himself and reached to the side to pull 3 sealed spheres from his private dimension. He threw the spheres, which were seals, behind the group. When the seals were let go, 3 beasts with long tails stood up behind the group. They were Isobu, the 3-tailed, who looked like a strange armored dinosaur turtle, Kakuo, the 5-tailed, who looked like a giant horse with a dolphin's head and horns, and Chome, the 7-tailed, who looked like a giant armored grasshopper wearing a helmet. Naruto thought that Chome was the most ugly of the beach. Isobu screamed, "Run!" as soon as he was free and saw him in front of him. After his clones beat him up to catch him and bring him to the meeting, he couldn't think of anything else to do but run away. Kurama roared, and Isobu just stood still and looked at him. Isobu asked in a confused way, "Kurama?" "Isobu, stop making fun of us all and act like a grown-up." Kurama told him off. When he got Kakuo and Chome out of the Jubi, they were calmer and more interested in what was going on. "Now that we're all here, we can talk," Naruto said, and he used a genjutsu on everyone in the room. The genjutsu linked everyone's minds, and now the humans were in front and the Biju were behind in a dark space. Behind him, Kurama's Kyuubi form was shown. People looked at one another. Shukaku gave a yawn. "I'm not interested in this meeting because I already know what it's about and I'm fine with this guy. Also, I have no plans to leave the arena," Shukaku said. Gaara said, "I'm not uncomfortable with where I am either, and Shukaku and I have worked hard to be ready for any invasion of this world." Roshi asked, "What do they talk about?" "About Otsutsuki. They are where we came from, and it's possible that some of them will come to this world to destroy it in a few more years, Kurama said as images of the Otsutsuki floated above him. In reality, you'll just be a backup plan in case I lose. Even so, it will be against the rules for Biju and their Jinchurikis to get involved in human wars after today. Nor can they be forced to protect ninja villages against their will. After this meeting, any Biju or Jinchuriki who wants to be alone will be able to do so, because I can split them up, Naruto said, and everyone understood why they were there. All I want to do is go back to my lake, Isobu said. Isobu, our creator gave us the job of keeping this world safe, Kurama growled in a scary way. Isobu said, I can keep watch from my lake. At the end of the meeting, only Killer Bee, the Eight Tails, Gaara, and Shukaku decided to stick together. Even though a human and a Biju together were stronger because of the human's jutsu, the others decided to go their separate ways. Naruto had no choice but to give in to their demands and let them go as long as they didn't cause any trouble. In the end, it was up to them to decide how to live their lives. Kurama decided to go on a long trip around the world, but he promised to come back and see them from time to time. He would also try to get the others to take human bodies so they could use jutsu like he did. Naruto and Hinata went back to the village, where one of Naruto's clones was working with Pain to plan the future conquest of the continent. This clone was telling Pain about the new laws and government system Naruto wanted to set up. Naruto didn't have much to do when he got back to the village and his clones went to work for him. Hinata had to do her job as head of the Hyuga clan, so he couldn't bother her. They could only spend half a day together. Because of this, Naruto got bored and opened a path to another dimension that Kaguya knew about. He planned to use this path to train his body. This dimension was made up of icy mountains where no one lived, so he could train without putting anyone else in danger. After a half day, Naruto went back to his own world and wondered if it was time to deal with the danger on the moon. Toneri Otsutsuki, the last descendant of Homura Otsutsuki, lived on the moon. He was an extremist who planned to destroy Earth if it didn't follow his rules for peace or war. As Naruto's own conquest was coming up, he didn't want anything to go wrong, so he moved to the moon. Once he got there, it was easy for him to find Toneri, who had short, white hair, pale skin, and no eyes. Toneri spent his days taking care of an artifact called Tenseiga. It was a big sphere where people in his clan put their eyes to get stronger, and it helped them beat the main branch of their clan. Naruto thought that the main part of that clan was stupid because, from what he remembered, they just stood in front of the weapon and waited to be defeated. Toneri asked Naruto, "Who are you and how did you get here?" As he used the Tenseiga to protect himself as he saw Naruto coming. Naruto moved toward him and, without saying anything, pulled out his soul and ate it. Naruto knew that in order to stop Toneri from destroying the earth, he would need Homura Otsutsuki's help, but he couldn't just call him up whenever he wanted to. The ghost of Homura Otsutsuki showed up next to him. It looked at Toneri's dead body, then at Naruto. The ghost of the old man warned that it would be bad if you were the only one to protect this world. Naruto grimaced because, from what he could remember, Toneri had only made plans for Boruto's offspring. Naruto said, "The safety of the world is not only in my hands, but also in the hands of the 9 Bijus, to whom I will give their own bodies, just like I did with Kurama." The Bijus were thousands of times stronger than any ninja, and as long as they had a body, they could not be defeated. Naruto could also speed up his rebirth by using his clones in the Karma Mark, so he didn't need any more help. Homura was about to say something, but Hagoromo walked up and stood next to him. Hagoromo said in a neutral tone, "He's come a long way on his own." It seemed like this was turning into a group of old men getting together. "Don't worry, old men. Unlike you, I know a lot of useful things, and this world will soon change, hopefully for the better," Naruto said. The ghost of Homura sighed. "Let's hope so," said Homura and touched his left shoulder. Hagoromo touched his right shoulder. "You will now be the guardian of our legacies," said Hagoromo, and Naruto received a multitude of knowledge that came from both elders and represented their understanding of this world. "Now it's up to you to decide what will happen to this world," said Homura, and the 2 elders vanished. The power he received combined was not even 5% of what he already possessed. Naruto valued the knowledge of how power worked more than the power itself. This was because Homura and Hagoromo were born in this world and gained power over time, unlike the Otsutsukis, who got a sudden boost of power every time they ate a chakra fruit. Naruto sent the Tenseiga to his personal dimension and destroyed the Moon Palace to make a tomb for Toneri in the Otsutsuki clan of the Moon. Naruto then went back to Earth. Once the loose ends with Akatsuki and the Bijus were taken care of, he could start his plan to take over the world. A month later, Naruto was with Hinata on the roof of the Hyuga house. They were up early and watching the sunrise. "It's starting," Naruto said as the sun seemed to lose its brightness and half of the sky turned into a palace surrounded by an army with Nagato's face on their black cloaks and red clouds on their heads. The army looked like a huge swarm of ants. "I am Nagato, heir of Hagoromo, the sage of the six paths," a voice said in the background. Hinata looked at him, and Naruto nodded to confirm that he was doing this. Not him himself, but one of his copies. The voice kept going on. "Since people started living in this world, wars and the damage they cause have never stopped. But I'm not here today to tell you that this part of our history will be forgotten. Instead, I'm here to tell you that peace will start today, because I, the Emperor of this world, have been told to do so by your guardian god. As of today, there will be only one Lord, and that will be me," the voice said. The image then changed to show Nagato sitting on a golden throne with Konan and Yahiko standing in front of him. But they weren't alone. Kneeling in front of them were the daimyos of the different countries with their most powerful feudal lords. "As of today, there will be no lords but me, and the world will be ruled by meritocracy under my rule and my laws. All the people who live in this world will be their own lords and be protected by me." Nagato said, "Everyone will be responsible for themselves, and the peace of the world will be in everyone's hands." Then his image disappeared from the sky. 2 hours later, a clone of Nagato came to the village to negotiate a military agreement with the emperor. This agreement would keep the ninja in the ninja villages. Ninja would not be allowed to live in the cities, and anyone who did would have to give up their chakra and skills first. As for the villages, they would be the military power behind the emperor, who wouldn't make an army because that would only lead to more weapons and the development of more weapons, which would only lead to more war and conflict. Common criminals would be dealt with by the police, while gangs of looters and organized bandits, as well as private armies or renegade ninjas, would be dealt with by the ninja villages. The ninja villages could also take on bodyguard jobs from civilians and do private investigations, but they couldn't kill people who weren't criminals because that would break the treaty and hurt innocent people in the empire. In the treaty, ninja wars were also banned, but the administration of justice and the independence of the ninja villages would continue as before. The rules imposed on the ninja villages only affected their relationships with the empire and its people, not how they worked internally. And just like the treaty with the feudal lords, any disobedience or violation of the agreement would mean the end of patronage and economic ties. Tsunade and the clan chiefs signed the treaty because they knew they had no other choice, but they felt safer than the other villages because Naruto was there in case the emperor went crazy. In reality, Naruto could only blink because he was the mastermind behind it all. A year later, Naruto married Hinata, and 4 years later, their first daughter was born. The empire had already set up its foundations, and more than 90% of its citizens were happy with their new rights and opportunities. Those who were not happy were the feudal lords and their families, who lost all of their power and most of their possessions because they owned whole cities. Conspiracies and rebellions happened often, but when ninja villages got involved, it only made things worse for them. With each rebellion, they lost more economic resources and property. But none of this mattered to Naruto, who lived in peace as the head of the Anbu route in Konoha. He had nothing to do with running the empire, and his only responsibilities were to Konoha. Naruto wasn't completely calm, though, because there were still some loose ends to tie up before the Otsutsukis arrived. He planned to do that today, since his clones had already captured 2 high-priority targets. Naruto had traveled through space to meet them, and now he was in a big metal building in the Rain Village, which had grown like crazy in the last 5 years. The people who lived there were proud that the current emperor was a ninja born in their village, because one of his servants was the angel Konan, who used to be the right hand of their leader. Their theory was supported by the fact that their city had become the center of the ninja world and that the biggest ninja villages sometimes gave them gifts. It was a city full of opportunities, and since ninja wars were no longer allowed, it was becoming a safe place for villages to trade with each other. The JNIN level ninja knew that the city had a secret security force. They also knew that Nagato, the current emperor, was the former leader of this village, and that anyone who tried to cause trouble there should carry a coffin on their back because everyone who had tried before had died. Naruto smiled as he saw the city become a hub for ninja world trade, meetings, and the signing of agreements, as well as a place for ninja to relax and have fun. It seemed like pain would soon be forgotten. Then Naruto turned around and saw that his clones were holding two men down on their knees in a hotel room. One was an Otsutsuki named Ashiki, and the other was a human named Beloved. Both men had been under the watch of his clones for several years, and it was no longer useful to let them go free because Dr. Amato had already gotten what he wanted, which was the body of the Otsutsuki god, so these two men were no longer useful to him. Ashiki growled at Naruto as he looked him in the eyes. He was completely sealed and always watched over by his clones. Naruto moved forward and put his hands on both of the men's heads. Dr. Amato tried to talk, but Naruto didn't want to explain anything to two dead people, so he took their souls and all of his knowledge. Then, his clones put their bodies in boxes and brought them to his lab. Naruto took over the body of the god Otsutsuki after absorbing the souls of Dr. Amato and Ashiki. This gave him a lot of useful skills, such as omnipotence, an Otsutsuki power that let him change reality, and an ultimate dojutsu that could change how people saw and remembered things in this world. He also got omniscience, which let him know and see everything at all times, but only from the time he was born in this world. He couldn't go beyond that. He also got a divine ability called Karma, which sent any attack on him back to the person who made it. He finally got all of Ashiki's skills by studying his body. This included his divine dojutsu, which let him move between dimensions, change the size of things, and do genjutsu very well. As a bonus, he also got Ashiki's jubi, but he no longer needed a jubi body and couldn't use it to improve his own, so he turned it into a seed of the tree of life and kept it, thinking that it might come in handy someday. Years went by, and then the Otsutsukis arrived. As soon as they crossed the dimensional gates into the ninja world, a million clones jumped on them, sealed them, and then brought them to Naruto to have their bloodlines and souls assimilated. So, 20 years after he came to this world, Naruto had reached his goal of becoming a real Gary Stu, there, with no rivals and a carefree life full of luxury and no worries. Now, he had also tied up all the loose ends by capturing and integrating the last Otsutsukis. Naruto had 2 more daughters during this time, and he was very happy to be with Hinata. But he still felt empty, hopeless, and unsafe. That part of Naruto was called the Traveler. It was a wandering soul that ran into its own soul and couldn't remember its own name, but it could remember its family, its own death, and its regrets. Nothing Naruto got in this world could fill that hole. The Traveler wanted to keep going, so Naruto built a second secret laboratory and started experimenting with the Otsutsuki's power to open portals to other dimensions, hoping to find a way to open a portal to the Traveler's world. With these tests, the Traveler's soul went back to being peaceful. Naruto was working toward other goals with these experiments and his clones' trips to other dimensions. He wanted to find out if there were more Otsutsukis around and if the ninja world, which he and his family lived in, was in danger. Naruto stepped out of a capsule 50 years after he had arrived in the ninja world. When he looked in the mirror, he saw that he looked like a man in his mid-20s. He had a fit body and blue eyes, and his last eye didn't work. Naruto covered his body with chakra, and it turned into his clothes, a doctor's robe with flames and the word, root, on the back. Then he looked to his side, where a similar-looking man was coming out of another capsule. But it wasn't the same in every way. Naruto frowned, and the man put his hand to his head and stroked his straight, silky blonde hair. This made Naruto look completely different. The man also covered his body with chakra. He showed up in sneakers and a flannel, giving him a casual look from another world. The man said, "I don't like hair that won't stay in place." He didn't need to say that because he and Naruto were the same person, and Naruto already knew what he thought. They had spent decades trying to separate their souls, but in the end, it was impossible. They were the same person and had the same soul, which could not be changed or split. Their minds were different, though. They were able to split his soul and put it in two bodies, each of which was controlled by a different consciousness. This body was controlled by him, and the other was controlled by the traveler. However, there was no difference between them. They were still the same person, sharing their vision, thoughts, and experiences, even without using the Rinnegan. The only difference was that one consciousness chose to stay separate in one body while it was dominant in the other, causing a sudden change in personality, as the traveler had already shown. Even his eyes were different, showing apathy and weariness. The traveler was a troubled man who could not find peace in this world, which he did not consider his own. That was why they had made the radical decision to split his soul, which they were able to do by using the 10 tails as materials. They had long since lost their humanity, but the most radical part of their decision would come at that moment. Naruto asked, "Are you sure about this?" But he already knew the answer, since they had the same thoughts. He was also over 70 years old and had been with the traveler for over 60 years, so his decision hurt him. "My life has no point in this world, and I have no reason to keep living," said the traveler. He raised his hand and said, "I know you don't agree with that, but that's how I see it. I am." The traveler had forgotten his name and much of his past. He was sad and tired and said, "I don't even know who I am." Naruto thought that if this person wanted to do that, even though he had forgotten part of his life, he must have been very special in his world. The traveler smiled. "Yes, I was the definition of stubborn. I wouldn't give up anything, not even my own life. Maybe that's why I came to this place, but I can't leave it behind. I can't live having failed," said the traveler. Naruto thought that was a perfect example of being very stubborn. "Even if we've lost people, we can move on," Naruto said, thinking of his own parents. "You're a god now, so there's nothing stopping you from bringing them back. Don't be afraid, they'll be proud of you," said the traveler. "That's not the only thing. Have we got permission to do it? To give in to our whims just because it's something we can do?" Naruto said. "Hippie thinking. Totally useless." The traveler said with disdain. "No one in this world wants to die, so it is also impossible for anyone to accept their death," said the traveler. Naruto bit his tongue not to say anything, because his words would hurt them both, more Naruto than the traveler. He said with regret, "You're still a child. I choose to die because I don't see any point in living. I've decided to die because I'd rather not be in pain. I don't want to die, but I do want to stop being in pain. No one wants to die, and if they do, it is always because of something outside of themselves. Therefore, don't think twice. Bring your parents back. It wasn't their fate to die, they hadn't accepted their deaths, they're not happy being dead, and it's not your fate to have to accept their deaths because you are a god in this world. And if a god can't be selfish with the things he wants, all that's left for humans is hopelessness and eternal regret," the traveler said. Naruto shuddered. Before the traveler came, he was one of those people who had to just accept the way things were. Even though he had a lot of potential, he didn't know it, so he kept moving forward in the hope that things would change someday. In his desperate situation, it was hope that kept him going. If he had lost hope, he would have died, just like any other person who refused to move forward. Hope was what kept people going, what gave them dreams, goals, and a reason to live. You couldn't give up hope because it would mean the end. The traveler had lost hope, or to be more precise, he no longer had any hope in this world. If his current plan failed, he would give up everything, erase his own consciousness, and die. Traveler wasn't a name, and neither was Naruto. The traveler nodded. The traveler said, "I'm nothing, but I'm still something, and I'm also you. Until I get my own name, I'll be Zien." "Then good luck, Zien," Naruto said, hoping he wouldn't have to erase part of his own mind and feeling the same hopelessness as Zien that this last, desperate plan would work. Naruto and Zien took a step to move through space to a part of their laboratory that was on the other side of the planet and 10,000 meters deep. There was only one room, and it was 100 meters long, 100 meters high, and 100 meters deep. It was full of computers everywhere. Chakra was used to power these technological devices, and most of their functions depended on it. The computers were set up along the walls and were run by 200 copies of themselves. In the middle was a huge round object with a flat bottom on which floated a 10-meter-wide sphere of water. All of the wires from the nearby computers were connected to the platform, and 30 clones sat around it with their eyes closed. They were always sending their chakra and power to the platform, which was made of a chakra-conducting metal made by the Rinnegan, which made the whole room an extension of his own body. The artifact itself was a specialization of some of their skills, like opening dimensional portals and manipulating time, which they had learned while studying the ruins of this world. These skills were what kept the hope of Xian alive and led them to make this dimensional travel artifact in the hopes that it would take them back to the world of Xian. They had looked into other dimensions for 20 years, but they had never found anything like the dimension of Xian. That had changed a year ago when they found a known world, even though Xian thought it was made up. This made him think that maybe he could find his own world. Still, they didn't go without a plan and thought about all the options. If this world was real, others would be too, so they had to be careful not to go to worlds with dangerous beings that could wipe them out. When Naruto found his first known world, he was very careful. However, after weighing the pros and cons, he decided there was no danger and sent a clone there. It was a world like the ancient land of Xian, but it was in the middle of a war against machines, which made it clear, it was the world of the exterminators. Xian thought it would be best to start on a small world where he wouldn't be in too much danger. He also didn't dislike the technology on that world, which had supercomputers and even machines that could think for themselves. He chose to try there because of this. After making his choice, Naruto sent a clone, but a minute later, he frowned when he found out that the clone had been destroyed on the way. Naruto blinked and looked at the information in the portal he had just opened. The sensor said that the portal was not stable. It was the first time someone had said that a portal wasn't stable, but Naruto knew how to fix it. With the help of his clones, he made a portal that was as stable as the sensor artifact that kept in touch with the other dimension. Then he sent out a second copy. This time, it was destroyed in 5 minutes. Naruto blinked and realized what was going on. It was easy to understand, since the trip wouldn't take more than 10 seconds in other worlds like the ninja world. But in this case, the first try took 1 minute and the second attempt took 5 minutes. This meant that the clone did not stay together long enough to get to its destination. The problem was clear: the size wasn't close enough. The trip was too much for his body at the time. Even though his body could handle a nuclear blast, it couldn't handle going from one dimension to another. Naruto groaned. The answer was clear. He needed something bigger and more durable, but they had already reached their limit in that way. He couldn't send a fortress through a dimensional rift, and he didn't even want to think about the creatures that might show up if he made a fuss. If the ninja world and the exterminator world were real, what about H.P. Lovecraft's horror worlds and their cosmic horrors? I didn't want to bring attention to creatures like that, so I had to stay out of sight. The problem with this was that he had to go to one of these faraway worlds and look into life there to find a way for Xian to get back home. Naruto didn't give up, and after a year, he had a solution. His solution was to split his soul, make another body, and use layers of seals to turn that body into a bundle of cells. His soul and consciousness would be kept in that package. This was a puppetry jutsu that Sasori of the arena came up with, but that wasn't all. During the trip, the cell pack would be destroyed for sure. He would keep a few cells to keep his mind and soul alive, but that wouldn't be enough to keep him alive. So, as part of his plan to invade another dimension, he chose a target when he arrived to infiltrate his body, planted his cells at the time the dimension opened, and used his ability to absorb souls along with Orochimaru's body stealing jutsu to take over the body of a native of the dimension he was trying to invade. So, he would have a body, and the invasion would be successful. They didn't worry about the dead during this process because, once they were found, they could bring the person back and give them money. Once they decided on their plan, they still had to choose which technological world to go to. In the past year, they had found several more technological worlds. Star Trek, Stargate, and Warhammer 40K were all set in these worlds. In Star Trek, the Qs lived between these 3 worlds. They were powerful people who, like him, knew everything about the galaxy. They used divine technology and had the power to change reality because they knew a lot of divine things. Because of this, they would find it when they got there, so Star Trek was out of the question. Warhammer 40K was a futuristic world with weapons that were much stronger than those in Star Trek, but there were also gods that would find him when he got there. So, it would not be a good idea to go there. Lastly, there was the Stargate world, which had technology that was much more advanced than that of Star Trek and about the same as that of Warhammer 40K. On the other hand, the gods of this universe were not all-knowing. They often missed small things or chose to ignore them, as long as they didn't mess with reality. This world was the best chance for him. If he was wrong and they found out, he hoped he could talk with them because he would be arriving in the Milky Way galaxy, where the ancients had strict rules and didn't get involved in things that happened on the material plane. If Anubis could keep himself alive, he wouldn't have any problems. This didn't mean he wasn't in danger, though, because if someone stole his soul, he'd be dead. He wasn't the only god who could change souls. He didn't know if the Qs could do it, but H.P. Lovecraft's monsters and the gods in Warhammer could. His universe was 1,000 times more dangerous than Stargate's because of this. After a week of getting ready to carry out their plan, which included making Xian a new body, Naruto and Xian were standing in front of the portal to the Stargate world. This would be their first stop as they looked for a way back to Xian's original world. Xian made 10 clones, and they used the jutsu for making all things on him to turn him into a sealed pack of cells. This was enough for him to reproduce in a native body and make his original body. Naruto took the sealed package, which was a 20-centimeter diameter cylinder, and sent it out through the portal without hesitating, since everything was already set up, from the target body to the time it would reach. When Xian was thrown through the portal, he went through a dimensional tunnel with terrible spatial and temporal forces that were beyond his power and that he could not even imagine trying to control. Xian traveled for 5 minutes, during which time he lost all of his seals of protection. However, he still reached his goal when his few remaining cells entered the body of the target, absorbed his soul, and finished the first part of his plan. Yes. Naruto yelled, but a half-second later, his heart skipped a few beats. The link between him and Xian had been broken. He was still Naruto and also Xian, but the other half of his soul was no longer attached to him in the other world. The clone stopped talking as the portal closed. It said, "The assimilation is done, we couldn't have failed." Before it ended, an energy-based creature had gotten to where the body of its assimilation target was lying. An ascended one, thought Naruto. These beings could change reality on a planetary scale, and they were no less powerful than he was. The Ori, who were also ascended, could bring people back from the dead whenever they wanted, just like he could. He couldn't do anything that an ascended couldn't also do. Well, he thought they couldn't make shadow clones, but he wasn't sure. Naruto clenched his fists in despair, but the part of Xian that was still with him was happy and content, so Naruto was confused. The infiltration worked, and the Ascended didn't turn their target into ashes to get rid of him. Instead, they just closed the portal and cut off their connection to him. In short, they didn't want to kill him and hadn't even touched him. As long as they let him stay, there was hope for success. The clones cheered when Naruto said, "Good." Now they just had to wait for Xian's message, which could take a while if the Ascended gave him trouble. He might not be able to use his abilities or powers while he was in their galaxy, so he would have to leave. Taking into account that they had used a human body, that could take years. They didn't pick a Goa'uld because these beings had a very advanced immune system that could even fight cancer. No virus was known to be able to deal with them. This meant that it was possible that their cells would be destroyed, and without them, it would be impossible to make a new body, even if their soul managed to take over their target. They only had one chance, and they didn't want to take that chance, so they didn't even try to find a Goa'uld to take his body. Even though they didn't have many natural defenses, the other advanced species in this universe faced the same risk. Their technology could track their cells and kill them. In this way, the Talon and the Asgard were also thrown away. They chose a person from Earth because his or her technology couldn't find them and his or her immune system wasn't strong enough to stop the divine cells from taking over. Naruto smiled, and with Xian's new hope, they just had to wait and see what happened, hoping for the best.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.